So, this is it. This is the episode that many believe is the worst in the entire series. Pretty much every critic has panned it to oblivion, so there's almost no point in me reviewing this episode. But I made a promise. I said I'm going to review every single episode of the show. But to avoid redundancy, this is going to be a different kind of review. Instead of giving a score, because you already know the answer, we're going to be asking ourselves a couple of questions. Number 1, is this episode really that bad? Number 2, if so, where does it fall apart? And number 3, what was our new writer Meriwether Williams thinking when she wrote this episode? Let's begin. This episode starts at BronyCon? No, it's actually the Rainbow Dash fan club, so yeah, BronyCon. Alright, problem number 1 here is that this intro sequence has absolutely nothing to do with the episode. There are just some kids fawning over Rainbow Dash. You could cut it out entirely, and this episode wouldn't be better or worse off. But to this episode's defense, it isn't the only episode that does this, so that's not the problem. The episode proper begins with Rainbow Dash swimming in the clouds, trying to relax when she hears some pony calling for help in a well. I really should be asking who she's talking to, but this episode goes to great lengths to parody superhero movies. I know it's odd and it doesn't fit too well into the series, but it doesn't really bother me. Rainbow dives into the well and saves the child, and for some reason all of her friends have gathered around, along with a crowd of other background ponies, which makes no logical sense. Rainbow was up on a cloud, and if she heard the pony calling for help, they would have heard it too. Wow, this is going to be a long review, isn't it? Every pony in the crowd is so happy that they didn't have to face the consequences of passing by a screaming child in a well that they cheer Rainbow on, and Rainbow seems to like the attention. We cut to the next scene where a baby stroller is rolling down a hill and Rainbow Dash rushes in to save it. Her being the only pony able to do so here is a lot more believable because she is the fastest flyer in all of Ponyville. Every pony starts cheering again, inflating Rainbow's ego enough to get her to tell a very sick joke.
Oh no! There's something wrong with the baby! She's not cheering for every pony's favorite hero, Rainbow Dash!
That wasn't funny! Paparazzi start taking pictures of her. Rainbow's friends come around and begin talking behind her back once again. Why have they been so hesitant to just talk to Rainbow? I will admit that it's not so bad here because they're saying mostly good things about Rainbow. We cut again to another disaster. A balcony at the elderly home breaks and Rainbow rushes in to save them, and it seems the whole town has just come out to see her, and Rainbow is taking in all of the cheering. Her friends come around and seem to be taking concern. Okay, there's nothing terrible about this episode yet. Let's keep watching. Rainbow is telling her stories to a bunch of kids at Sugar Cube Corner, and her friends are getting a little upset.
I acted pretty awesomely heroic that day. Awesomely heroic that day and awesomely arrogant ever since.
Wait, play that again.
Thinking back on it, I acted pretty awesomely heroic that day. Awesomely heroic that day and awesomely arrogant ever since.
So, at least a couple of days have passed. Transitions! Use them! The way you've edited this episode makes it seem like Rainbow's bragging right after she saved the elderly, which she has every right to do. But according to that one line, this has been going on for quite a while. Which yeah, dealing with that would get kind of annoying. So this answers question number 2. This is where the episode falls apart, by not conveying that this has been going on for quite some time, and forcing us to assume that her friends tried to talk to her. You cannot leave out details like that. Oh yeah, Spike is ghostwriting Rainbow's autobiography. You know, that's actually kind of funny. There's an idea for a joke there, but it was really poorly timed and happened too quickly. Humor is all about timing. And yes, Rainbow is probably at her worst here with an ego inflated to the point of popping, and her friends are giving each other side glances. Sometime later, or maybe sometime next year, I don't know, Meriwether didn't tell me, Rainbow Dash is signing autographs when she hears some pony calling for help. A hot air balloon is plummeting to the rider's doom, and Rainbow's caught up in her own ego. After signing some more autographs, Rainbow Dash chases after the balloon. Suddenly, a challenger appears, hopping across rooftops and saving the rider of the balloon, allowing Rainbow to plummet with it.
Holy turnips! That pony came out of nowhere!
Holy turnips? What kind of euphemism is that? Oh yeah, Twilight is in the audience and looks totally surprised. Wait, I think there are a bunch of scenes we didn't see. The mayor comes out and calls the masked hero Mare-Do-Well. Good thing too. Really fits the M emblem on her costume. Couldn't imagine how awkward it would be if she picked a name that started with a different letter. And Rainbow doesn't seem to like this new challenger. There's another disaster on the same broken road from earlier. You'd think they'd fix that considering it's proven to be a hazard twice now. Rainbow tries to save them, but fails. So Mare-Do-Well saves the people and disappears into the day. Rainbow begins to doubt herself, now knowing that Mare-Do-Well is stronger than her. Another disaster, this time at a construction site. Did Ponyville suddenly become Townsville? What's next? A giant monster plagues the town? Just like the previous 2 times, Mare-Do-Well comes in, upstages Rainbow, and leaves. This is a redundant scene. It is unnecessary. As in, you could get rid of it and the plot would be the same. There are so many redundant scenes in this episode. It wouldn't be so bad, except they're cutting out information we need for scenes we don't. Rainbow finds a leak at a hydroelectric dam. Okay, I know that Ponyville has always been anachronistic, but it's really distracting in this episode. Obviously, it's the least of this episode's problems, so we'll pocket it for now. Rainbow Dash blocks the leak and is once again looking for attention, and the dam bursts. Of course it does. Just like a fruit stand must always be knocked over, a dam must always burst. Rainbow grabs a log and comes face to face with Mare-Do-Well. She uses magic to fix the dam, once again upstaging Dash, and once again, Mare-Do-Well disappears. Rainbow then realizes that Mare-Do-Well's a unicorn, meaning that she can fly, and Mare-Do-Well can't. Except Mare-Do-Well can. Yeah, apparently she's an alicorn now. The most interesting thing about this scene is not the fact that Mare-Do-Well seems to be an alicorn, it's everybody's reaction to it. No one is calling bullshit about it, which means it was this episode that canonized more alicorns than Celestia and Luna, not a Canterlot wedding. We cut to Sugar Cube Corner, where Rainbow is all bummed out, and all of her friends are singing Mare-Do-Well's praises. Twilight claims that Mare-Do-Well did some really good magic. Rarity says that she likes Mare-Do-Well's costume, and Applejack is talking about Mare-Do-Well's humility. When Rainbow has an outburst, all of her friends laugh at her. So in retaliation, Rainbow claims that she can be a better hero than Mare-Do-Well. Unfortunately, I guess, there are no more disasters happening, which gets Rainbow more and more impatient. Then she sees Granny Smith trying to cross the road, and Rainbow shoves her across. A disgruntled Granny Smith beams Dash in the head with her purse, claiming that she didn't want to cross the street in the first place. Except in the last shot, she was already starting to cross the road. Rainbow sees some pony trying to open a jar of peanut butter, and she tries to open it, and fails. You know what? That's actually kind of funny. Eventually they get the jar open, and Rainbow is trying to milk this epic feat of heroism. Then Rainbow begins mowing the lawn, and when she tries to claim that as another great feat, every pony in the park shuns her. Ponyville is really fickle. Just because Mare-Do-Well's around doesn't change what Dash already did before her. I guess they just forgot. Rainbow begins wallowing in sadness on top of a rain cloud.
What about me? How could every pony forget about me so easily?
Didn't I just ask that question? Wow, now the episode is pointing out its own flaws. By the way, that's still a legitimate question. And the scene continues to be sad until Scootaloo comes around and tells Rainbow Dash about a parade in Mare-Do-Well's honor. Rainbow decides to go to the parade, seemingly having an idea. Once again, it's conveyed poorly. So Mare-Do-Well appears at the parade and Rainbow confronts her, threatening her to take off her mask. Then Mare-Do-Well runs away because I have no idea. No, really, I don't know. With all those feats of heroism before, I'm sure Mare-Do-Well could defend herself and make Dash look like an even bigger fool. But she doesn't, and she runs off into the city, which has become much more urban and eerily abandoned. I mean, this is a freaking ghost town. Eventually, Rainbow Dash catches Mare-Do-Well, and it's found out to be Pinky in disguise. Another Mare-Do-Well appears, and it happens to be Twilight. A third Mare-Do-Well appears. This one is Applejack. They were all playing Mare-Do-Well at different times in order to teach Rainbow a lesson in humility.
Why? Don't you want me to be a hero?
Of course we want you to be a hero.
But a real hero doesn't brag.
Which is why you weren't opposed to a citywide party in your honor. Guys, guess what? You're gonna think I'm nuts. Like, fucking nuts. But I don't hate this episode. I actually kinda like it. Oh, don't get me wrong, I'm still failing this episode. But let me do a little defending first. Part of the reason I like this episode is that I was watching really closely and able to catch that line. It made the main five a little more justified. Then again, they were bragging about their own accomplishments about Mare-Do-Well, making them seem like hypocrites. Can I ask you, just for a second, to pretend that the main six weren't Mare-Do-Well, what realistically would Twilight, Rarity, and Applejack compliment Mare-Do-Well on? Did they take it too far? Absolutely. There was no reason for Fluttershy to fly around as Mare-Do-Well, but sometimes people take things too far. It's gonna happen. If that someone is supposedly a friend, then it's only natural to think you have more leeway with them. To answer question number one, no, this episode isn't really that bad. It's still bad. Like I said before, the humor is poorly executed. We have redundant scenes instead of scenes that actually show the main six talking to Rainbow Dash about her bragging. Remember the golden rule of show, don't tell. The anachronisms get a little distracting, and it's abundantly clear that Rainbow doesn't get the moral at the end. You've heard it all before. You know about this. Instead of saying something that's been said 1,000 times, I think I'll say something new. This episode is not. And even if it was, if this is the worst thing the show has produced, the writers are doing pretty damn good. I mean, it's not an unholy abomination of hell like the Splinter. It's not blatantly offensive like Not All Dogs Go to Heaven. Nor does it shit all over established continuity like The Principal and the Pauper. Honestly, people talk about this episode like it made their eyes melt. That brings up another question. Why is this episode so hated? I don't really know, besides the fact that nearly every critic has panned it, but I do have a few theories. First of all, Rainbow Dash was the fan favorite at the time this episode aired, and it took a heavy shot at her personally. Secondly, this episode was the topic of one of Paleo's few negative reviews, and his word carries a lot of weight in the Brony community. Not that there's anything wrong with that, he thoroughly explained why he didn't like the episode. Third, this episode dips into each of the major flaws, so there's sort of something to hate for everybody. It has a poorly executed moral, and feeling Pinky Keen has a worse moral. It's horribly mean-spirited. Putting your hoof down is much more mean-spirited. Each of the main six are mean. In May the Best Pet Win, and in Ghostbusters they're all reprehensible. The dialogue is horrible. Ghostbusters.
They don't call me Rainbow and Dash for nothing.
It's not at all funny. Once again, Ghostbusters. They vilify a main character, and All's Well That Ends Well Spike is vilified by taking him out of character. I never for a second believed that this isn't how Rainbow would act, especially after her performance in the last episode. That just leaves one question left. What the hell is Meriwether Williams thinking when she wrote this episode? I actually don't blame everything that was wrong with this episode on her, like the ghostwriter joke. If a little more effort was put into timing, which is done by the director, then it would have worked. But Meriwether does take the brunt of the blame. The biggest problem is that Meriwether accidentally made Rainbow way too sympathetic. If she kept her egotistic behavior from the second act throughout the whole episode instead of being this sad and defeated, then the actions of the other main five would be a lot easier to watch. Remember what I said about Rainbow in the previous episode? That's some pony who deserved to be taken down a peg, granted by anyone but the ponies who did it, considering they weren't exactly angels either. But this Rainbow Dash deserves to be hugged. If you still hate this episode, I'm not going to stop you. There's definitely a lot to hate, but this is one episode you will not see on my own personal worst list.